Okay, welcome to your video on cadences. This is how we can hear chord progressions and whether they are finished or not, and if they're going to lead somewhere or not. It's usually to do with the last two chords of the chord progression and how things are finished. So just to keep a basic 4-chord progression structure, we're not going to mix this up with any of the other things that we've been doing, like chord substitution. We are just going to be going by our ear on the end of these progressions. We're going to give you a chance to pause the video at the end of each progression so you can really practice the progression and hear it for yourself. So all of these examples are in the key of G. So in G, every single F, as you know, is a sharp. So the very first progression I want to show you is the perfect cadence, which is also known as an authentic cadence. This is known as a 5-to-1 progression. Some of these progressions have got seventh chords in, just to keep us familiar with the idea of having sevenths in there, and also making sure our dominant fifth is always there. So for example, this very first progression is going to go G, we're going to go 1, 4, then we're going to do our dominant fifth, D7, and then back to G. Once again, I'm going to mix up my inversions on here, so sometimes I'm going to be playing my D7, for example, like this down here, but it just depends. So once again, you can play these in inversions or you can play these in root bog standard position. So for example then, let's go through the first one. The perfect cadence is going to go that 5-to-1. So we've got 1 into 4 into 5, back to 1, 1, 4, 5. And you can hear it sounds like it's finished. It sounds really quite nice. You can flower things up, put some roll chords in. It's very pretty, but it sounds finished. So the next cadence we're going to have a little look at is called a half cadence. Before that, just pause the video here and see if you can revise over that chord progression with the 5-to-1. The chord progression is appearing on the screen now. Moving into the second cadence, we're going to have a little look at the half cadence. This is when the fifth chord is the chord that it lands on at the very end of the progression, and it sounds like it kind of needs to go somewhere, but it sounds in a major, because it's the fifth, it's a major chord or a dominant seventh chord, and it sounds nice to the ear, but you know it wants to lead off somewhere else. So this chord progression is a 1, then it's a minor third, minor third for the B, then we've got the 6th chord, E minor, and then we're going to finish on that 5th chord. This one is just major 5th. So you hear it needs to go somewhere. 1, 2, B minor. Sounds really nice, but it's unresolved. That's a half cadence. Once again, we can flower things up with this. But it doesn't feel finished, it needs to lead to something else. Just pause the video now and see if you can go through that chord progression and really train your ear to a half cadence. Moving into our third one, we are now looking at a Plagal cadence. A Plagal cadence is when we end with 4-to-1. So for example, this chord progression is going 1, 5th dominant 7th, and then we're going 4-1. So we've got a G to our D7 to a C. Now a Plagal cadence does sound finished. It's not 5-1, 4-1, it's very similar, but it's just still a bit like, it is resolved. So that's the important thing to know, is that these ones do sound completed, but it just doesn't sound as a perfect fit as the 5-1 does. But it is still very nice to the ear, and you can be satisfied when you listen to the chord progression. So that would be a Plagal cadence, nice and straightforward. So pause the video here and see if you can go through the Plagal cadence progression and get your ear used to that one. And finally, our last cadence, we're going to be having a look at the deceptive, otherwise known as interrupted cadence. So this to the ear sounds as it sounds. It's an interrupted, it needs to move somewhere else. It's a bit unpleasant. It's almost, can be very jarring depending on the chords, but you know when you hear it that it's not completed, it's not finished. So for this one, I've taken a really strange and interesting progression. We're actually going to take a 1 here, then we're actually going to go to the F sharp diminished 7, which will be this one here. Then we're going to go for that D7, 5, and this is when the 5 basically precedes that last chord. So the 5 doesn't lead back to 1. This is what gives us the deceptive cadence. We are going to finish on 6, which is E minor. So that's a 1 to a diminished 7, dominant 5 chord, 6, minor 6 chord. We can try to flower that deceptive thing up as much as we can, but there is really nothing we can do. Sounds like it needs to go somewhere. So now I'd like you to pause the video and run over the deceptive chord progression that I have put there for you. So now I'm going to ask you to stay another 5 minutes at the piano, and I want you to take the key of E major. Sharps in that key. Father Charles goes down. I would like you to come up with a chord progression in the key of E major that holds a perfect cadence, a half cadence, a deceptive, and a plagal. You can do them in any order you want. See what sounds best. I'd like you to write down your ideas and then bring them to the next group session. Good luck and go.